So much so that there came a point where Meng, the founder of the group, there's maybe 30 of us in the room, and Meng, the founder of the group, came in between one of the sessions and said, "Hey, I just wanted to stop in and say hi. I'm going to come, I know I'm scheduled for tomorrow, but I just left the hotel room with the Dalai Lama, who was in town today, talking. They're friends." He called him, said, "Hey, come over and see me." And the Dalai Lama gave Meng a scarf, which he then presented to Mark Lesser, who's the CEO of Search Inside Yourself. And at the point, Meng walked into the room and said, "I was just with the Dalai Lama." My reaction at that point was of complete acceptance. It was, "Of course you were." Hey guys, how are you? I've missed you. I hope you're doing well. I have a great story to tell you about some personal growth that I experienced over this last weekend. Good story that'll lead us into a couple of good lessons. And I can't wait to get started. Go. Hey, welcome to the I Am Podcast, where we answer all the questions about spirituality and inner peace that you ever wanted to ask. I'm your host, Sean Webb. Okay, so I went this weekend, this last week, it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I got the red eye back to Charlotte from San Francisco to the first installment of the teacher training, teacher certification course for Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. Now, Search Inside Yourself is a brand new organization that was founded by Meng Tang from Google. And he was one of the earlier engineers, and he's what's called a Google Fellow, which is the highest ranking engineer title that you can get. But he made a transition from engineering into their equivalent of human resources because he started teaching an internal mindfulness and leadership track training program inside Google. And by far, this is the most popular program in Google that exists today. Everyone who is an employee Google, or most people, many people, try to jump into this course when it opens up. And every time that it opens up, when they offer it, it fills up within 30 seconds. Basically, all work at Google stops for the 30 seconds that it takes to get this course to be filled. And then when it's filled, work at Google continues. And it's an amazing course that teaches mindfulness, meditation, leadership, emotional intelligence, and is supported by the foundation of science. And so I used to be in executive leadership in a Fortune Global 100. And I had a bunch of responsibilities and was working for a company that had operations in 200 countries and territories, and I had to fly all over the place all the time to manage certain aspects of this organization, etc. But after my awakening, I realized that all my corporate success had meant really nothing in the grand scheme of things, in my scope of my life. And so I had to leave that world. I had to walk away from a 6-digit salary with absolutely nothing else to lean on, to bank on for income, to create a new existence. And this podcast and these teachings and the development of some of the products that I'm trying to push forward in the background, you can see a whiteboard behind me with some lights and cameras and stuff set up. I'm teaching emotional intelligence and writing books and creating a new life based on the awakening and the understanding that I have because of that, etc. But there was a portion of me during this whole process moving forward that was a little guilty. It said, I'm wasting a lot of talent that I had that allowed me to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, and become a very successful executive in the business world. And I'm ignoring that. I'm not using my talents to bring financial gain to my family. My wife is burdened with bringing in the majority of the money at this point. and that's unfair to her, and I don't want that. And so I was struggling through this development of creating these teachings and creating this brand new meld of mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and science to bring it to people so that they can understand better where their pain and suffering comes from, so that they can understand a little bit better how to take control of their emotional landscape. And so there was this little bit of a thorn in my side that said, you're wasting some of your talent. And when I find out that Search Inside Yourself existed, it's only not even a year old hardly. When I found out that those guys existed, I had to be involved. There was no choice. This is the first of its kind organization that is going to teach mindfulness, although there are other mindfulness programs, emotional intelligence, although there are other emotional intelligence programs, leadership, although there are other leadership programs, and tie those all together with the foundation of science. This is provable, it's replicable, it's sound. There is evidence that the things that we're going to teach are going to help you. And that's what makes Search Inside Yourself unique. And so I sent in an application thinking, hey, I'm a perfect addition to that because I'm all about teaching emotional intelligence and mindfulness and meditation and tying it all together with science. And so I got accepted, and I went out there for the first installment of the teacher certification. There's a year-long process to get certified because they want extremely knowledgeable, extremely well-educated, extremely dedicated people involved in this organization who are familiar with all the disciplines that they're teaching, as well as the science, etc. And so I went out there for the first meeting, and I walked into the room, and I started meeting the other people who are in the room. And the resumes, the caliber of people in this room is flabbergasting. It literally blew me away. There are leaders, like the world's leading specialists in cognitive neuroscience in the room. The world's leading specialists on mindfulness and meditation are in the room. We're being presented these disciplines and the deep dives on some of the various components of what we're going to be teaching by the leading specialists in the world on their topics, who are enthused about being involved with this movement. And so here I am walking into the room thinking, okay, well, I've worked really hard, and my practice is pretty sound, and I think I've got this ego thing pretty licked. And the first wave that hits me when I see the people who are around me in this room, my first reaction was, holy shit, these people made a mistake. Why am I here? Right? And so, of course, we know from all the stuff that we've been teaching up until this moment, that's an extremely egoic position. It's like, holy crap, who am I compared to these people? And so it was funny because I was like, whoa, where did that come from? It's like, okay, let's look at that for a second. Let's be with that for a second. Let's just sink right down into the reality of that thought that was based in the underset that I might not be qualified to be there. And over the course of the interactions, I was able to work through that and to hammer that back down and to release it, really, is what I did. And I just invited all of the awesomeness that was happening in that room into my existence. So much so that there came a point where Meng, the founder of the group, there's maybe 30 of us in the room, and Meng, the founder of the group, came in between one of the sessions and said, "Hey, I just wanted to stop in and say hi. I'm going to come, I know I'm scheduled for tomorrow, but I just left the hotel room with the Dalai Lama, who was in town today talking. They're friends." He called him, said, "Hey, come over and see me." And the Dalai Lama gave Meng a scarf, which he then presented to Mark Lesser, who is the CEO of Search Inside Yourself. And at the point, Meng walked into the room and said, "I was just with the Dalai Lama." My reaction at that point was of complete acceptance. It was, of course you were. Of course you were. You were with one of the most holy people and the most mindful people, the most awakened people on the planet just a few seconds ago. Of course you were. And it was at that point that I was in full acceptance that if aliens, I swear to you, if aliens would have landed on the roof, come down into that room and said, "We want you to be our emissaries for the world," I would have said, "Of course you do. Of course you do." It was a place of immense positivity, immense wonder, and what's called the beginner's mind. We're hanging on to nothing. Everything is possible. And it was a wonderful experience to be with those people, to interact with those people. Some of the stories that were told about how people found their way-seeking mind and how people got to where we're joining the group and becoming instructors that'll teach mindfulness and leadership and emotional intelligence to the world's largest corporations. It was breathtaking. It was amazing. It was wonderful. And I grew in places that I didn't realize that I had growth potential, including one of the great lessons that I want to share with you today. We need to be constantly forgiving of the world and allowing us to see where our negative emotions come from through the equation of emotion and how our emotions come to be as part of that process. We need to be forgiving of people who are maybe ignorant of that process and creating negativity in their own lives, in our lives, in the lives of others. But we also need to be forgiving of ourselves when we fall off the path for a few minutes or a few seconds or a few hours, a few days, a few years. We need to be forgiving of ourselves. And the path between me being intimidated and freaked out a little bit about the caliber of people that were in this room to the point where I was fully accepting and ready to rise to the challenge and become exactly what needs to fill that hole and deliver these leadership trainings. The thing that caused that catalysis was self-forgiveness. It was, I forgive myself for letting ego rise and create doubt within me. I forgive myself for falling off of the attention path for a few moments. I forgive myself for all the stuff going on inside me. And let's just move forward from here. And I think sometimes we forget when we're critical of the world, but we're even more critical of ourselves, that it's important to forgive the world for all the stuff that it's doing, maybe without its knowledge or without its intention. Forgive them for they know not what they do. It's also sometimes even more important to forgive ourselves for when we fall off the path, or when we find ourselves maybe, something as simple as we're meditating and then we wind up off of a long string of thoughts and we're like, oh, damn it, I'm not supposed to be thinking. I'm supposed to be quiet. My attention is supposed to be on my breath. My meditation is now ruined. Blah! It's okay just to forgive yourself. Let that go and come back to where you're centered. And Meg, who is one of the instructors, teaching the instructors, had a great analogy in the room, which was, if you're standing on a platform waiting on a train, your thoughts are that train that's going by. And if you can, you stay on the platform and you let the train come through and make its noise. But if by accident you get on that train and you find yourself being taken away by thought, the really cool thing is that when you realize that, you're immediately transported back to the platform. And you're immediately transformed back into your centeredness, your awareness that allows you to be in that space again. And so if you forgive yourself for finding yourself on the train, don't stand on the platform and start cursing yourself for getting on the train, because then you're going to be on another train. Just let it go. And if you find yourself being taken down by whatever emotional process or emotional turmoil or whatever it is in your life, be forgiving of yourself. Be willing to be compassionate to you. Because it's at that point that even if you're doing stupid stuff, or maybe you've been an asshole the last few days to your family and friends or perfect strangers or whatever it is, don't beat yourself up about it. Just stop. Forgive yourself. And do the things that are necessary for you to be who you really are, the wonderfully awesome, awakened, full of light person that exists within you. Be happy about life. Be amazed about life. Be grateful to how malleable our consciousness is and our attention is to be able to shift it at a moment's notice from something that may not be as positive to something that is fulfilling. Because we do have that capability. And it is right there. And it is awesome. Dan Goleman, who wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, who created this movement for what it is, tells us that attention regulates emotion. And that's really true. Because even in the way the brain works, the anterior cingulate cortex is kind of this traffic cop of attention. It pays attention to whatever is making the most noise in our brain. And so when emotions rise to a certain level, they create a requirement for our focus to turn to our emotions and deal with our emotions. And when you control that focus and you start practicing mindfulness and meditation, and you start practicing the metacognition of seeing the process of your emotions as we teach it in the equation of emotion, as soon as you start to see the process of your emotions, as soon as you start to take control of your attention and focus it, your emotions are downregulated. And this is particularly powerful if you're dealing with negative emotions, or you're dealing with emotional turmoil in your life. When you shift your attention, when you focus your attention on other things, it's not like you're ignoring your emotions. You are actually down-regulating your emotions. And when you start looking at the process of how your emotions were created by asking yourself, what was my expectation or preference about this situation, and what is my perception of this situation? The two variables that exist that create all emotions. When either one isn't there, we don't have an emotion about something. When both of them are there, we do have an emotion about something. When they're balanced, it's a positive emotion. When they're imbalanced, it's a negative emotion. When we start looking at that process, that is controlling our attention. And thanks to Matt Lieberman's study in 2007 from UCLA, when we start to name our emotions, we tame our emotions. We downregulate them. It's a scientific process that happens in our brain. And when we start looking at the process of the equation of emotion, instead of being controlled and drawn into the quagmire of our emotions and our emotional reactions and our wanting of justice and things like that, that gets downregulated. Our attention steps back for a second. And just like in episode 6, when we talked about the me, anytime you want to use the word me, just put the word the in front of it. Anytime you want to use the word I, put the word the in front of it. So that makes me angry comes to that makes the me angry. That's a really powerful lesson. That's a really powerful tool, because from a mind perspective and from a brain perspective, it changes our perspective of being in the moment, being chewed up by the emotions, being controlled by whatever it is that's happening to us. All of a sudden, our awareness is pulled up back out of that. And we see that whatever the situation is, isn't really affecting us. It's affecting our sense of self. It's affecting the process that happens in the brain. It's affecting the me, but it's not affecting our true existence, which can be found when we separate from the me by reminding ourselves that we aren't the me. And it creates that metacognition, that separate, observable space, that separate space of the observer on the whole process. And so using these tools like the equation of emotion, and like saying the in front of me, and focusing our attention on the breath in meditation, or through loving kindness and loving kindness meditation, when we do those types of things, we take control of our emotional landscape. And when we can start to change our perceptions, one of the variables in the equation of emotion, and we start to change our attachments or our expectations about those attachments as dictated by homeostasis, which is the other side of the equation of emotion, we control our emotional landscape. And what does that allow us to do? That allows us to live life without as many distractions and be that one awesome person that all of us are collectively together at the same time. So, I had an amazing weekend. And there is some awesome stuff in our future, because although I'm getting involved in Search Inside Yourself, I'm not going to stop doing this stuff, and I'm not going to stop putting out this stuff that's based on what we've developed here in the teachings. And we may integrate some of the stuff that we're teaching here into Search Inside Yourself, but we'll see. I mean, it's a whole process. We'll see how it shakes out. But, I really want, and I'm really aligned with, the goal of world peace through inner peace. And if we can get as many people as possible on board with this process, that's going to create the conditions for world peace in our lifetime. Because if we can teach the process of understanding why we get angry, why we get upset, why we get fearful, why we have all these emotional reactions due to our attachments, right? Including attachments of government, attachment of monetary system, attachment of political system, attachment of natural resources within a country boundary, whatever it is. If we can stop lobbing bombs in defense of those attachments by understanding the whole process and becoming metacognitive of how it's all happening, then world peace is a realistic goal. Maybe not within our lifetimes, but if we get to what Meng called a tipping point, and this is the awesome thing that I loved about Search Inside Yourself. The reason he started Search Inside Yourself was to attain world peace. His goal is to set the conditions of world peace within his lifetime and get to a point where we're on the path of teaching inner peace, because a collective inner peace creates world peace. At the point that we teach today's parents, today's children, tomorrow's adults, tomorrow's leaders, tomorrow's world leaders, about emotional intelligence, about mindfulness, about how the whole process of our pain and suffering comes to be, about why we want to defend the things that we're attached to, at the point that we can teach everyone about that, tomorrow's leaders stop dropping bombs on each other, and they stop reshuffling their priorities to defend whatever it is that's important to them, their me, and they start seeing themselves less as a collection of attachments and more as a portion of the human existence. And then we reshape our priorities to the first money that we have in taxes goes to feeding the people who don't have any food and the people who don't have any water, regardless of where the borders lie. And the next money goes to taking care of the people who may need a little help financially. And the next money, then you start spending money on infrastructure, and you start spending money on plans, and you don't have to spend a penny on defense because no one is attacking you. No one, or at least you don't have the perception that there's any fear that you need to defend something. And that's the big picture. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, I know it. It's going to be 400 or 500 years down the road. But the reality is, if we don't take the steps today, it's not going to happen in the future. So we have to be the catalyst. We have to get on board. We have to start spreading this message. So please get on board. Please spread this message, because we're doing some amazing stuff. Now, I'm not going to make any announcements for Search Inside Yourself. You can go to Search Inside Yourself by going to SIYLI.org and reading their press releases and all about the organization and the movement, etc. Some amazing things are happening. Some amazing people are being added to the board, household names for this group. And it's all about teaching mindfulness, teaching meditation, teaching emotional intelligence, teaching leadership, supported by science, which is what we've been doing here on this podcast for the last 3 or 4 years. It's amazing. And it's a grassroots groundswell of momentum that the world is ready for. So I need you on board. So get on board and spread this to other folks, because I think they're ready to get on board also. And there's some exciting stuff coming, both for this podcast and for the future of emotional intelligence and mindfulness and leadership and science, tying all this stuff together. There's exciting stuff coming down the road. So be ready for that. I love you guys. We'll have some awesome topics for the next few podcasts that have come out of the weekend that I just had. I had some great ideas while I was there and wrote those down. So we're going to talk about some really cool stuff. And I've also talked to some folks that we're going to have some really cool guests moving forward as soon as I get a little more organized to be able to do that type of an interview format. So stand by. If you want to support us, you can go by the website, IamSpirituality.com. You can go to Audible and get a free Audible book by going to audibletrial.com/IamSpirituality, picking up a great book. Well, we have a reading list, so go to the website, IamSpirituality.com, and check out the reading list. Sounds like I've got some visitors. So you guys have a great week. I love you. Talk to you soon. Peace.